Wait a minute. Not only is it his position, it's also his condition. Somebody say condition.
Condition.
The text says that he fell asleep. And it ain't the preacher's fault that he falls asleep. Paul is preaching. That's the man who's preaching. The man who wrote one half of the New Testament. So we know he could preach. Because here we are 2,000 years later, still preaching Paul's stuff. This text is tailored to teach us that you can have a good pastor and a good preacher and still miss what God is doing because you're asleep. Oh, bless his name, bless his name. As a matter of fact, well, I'm preaching right now, somebody's asleep because your mind is somewhere else. Y'all ain't getting it. Y'all ain't getting it. So let me see if I can do it this way.
Go ahead.
Some people are like the young man who got an iPhone from one of his friends. He got the iPhone, but it didn't have a SIM card. So he thought he'd be smart. So he took the SIM card out of his old cell phone and put it in the new iPhone. He had an iPhone, but he couldn't text. He had an iPhone, but he couldn't receive emails. He had an iPhone, but he couldn't use the GPS. His iPhone that looked good on the outside, but something was wrong down on the inside. He had an iPhone, but it couldn't do everything that it was designed to do. Y'all ain't getting it. Y'all ain't getting it. What I'm trying to get you to see is some people come to church and hang out on the edge and sleep. And they got an antiquated SIM card in an updated package. And they can't access what God has for them. They can't access the anointing. They can't access the joy of Jesus. They can't access deliverance because they got an antiquated SIM card. Y'all ain't getting it. Let me take it a step further. Can I take it a step further? What a SIM card is to an iPhone is what your soul is to God. You can come to church all you want to, but if your soul is messed up, you can't access the power of God. Okay, preacher, I know you said, okay, preacher, I got it. Get off of that. I know I made some mistakes. I know I failed. Some financial mistakes and some mistakes on my job and some mistakes with my family. And I know it was my fault. But what can I do now? That's a question. What can I do now? Well, before you throw in the towel and jump off the bridge and slit your wrist, let me tell you what you can do. You can do what the South Carolina did for Joe Biden. You can get another opinion. And that opinion is, with God, you can come back. Tell somebody and say, with God, you can come back. Eutychus. This young man with opportunity falls out of London. And it's his own fault. And he's down. He's been declared dead. The King James Version says it like this. He was taken up dead. Paul goes down, hugs him, and says, don't be alarmed because he's alive. Now the first question the first opinion was that he was dead. But Paul goes down and gives another opinion that says he's alive. That's what they said in the election, that Joe Biden was dead. But he came to South Carolina, and Jim Clyburn, who by the way is an AME, and the black voters of South Carolina said, no, Joe is still alive. Now my question is, who declared him dead in the first place? I mean, who said he was finished? And who said that he couldn't come back? Now, when Eutychus fell out the window, the church folk in this high-level ministry ran over to the window and looked out. But the text says it was Paul who went down to him. The saints saw the young man fall out the window, ran over to the window, looked out and said, oh, he's dead. But remember, They're on the third floor. They're on the third level. They are at a distance. How can you give a proper diagnosis from that distance? That's the problem I have with these virtual doctor visits. I know the pandemic's bad and nobody don't want to touch nobody, but that's the problem I have with these virtual doctor visits. How can you make a proper diagnosis and you ain't weighed me, you ain't checked my pulse, you ain't took my temperature, you ain't checked my blood pressure? In this text, people were so far away that they couldn't make the right determination. I know I'm right about it, because some of the folk who had given up on him had never talked to him. They read his resume, they looked at some polls, and listened to the other folk and what they said about him, but they never talked to him themselves. They were too far removed from him to make a proper diagnosis. Y'all better stop listening to folk who don't know nothing about you. Folk who drop in every now and then, if they drop in at all, talking about it's over and you're finished. Look at the text. Look at what Paul does. He goes down and hugs the young man. This is how fallen and messed up people come back. When folk at the top are willing to go to the bottom, so folk at the bottom can make it to the top. Oh, bless his name. That's what Paul did. As a matter of fact, this sounds like Jesus to me. Jesus came from the top all the way down to the bottom, so that those who are messed up on the bottom could get to the top. Jesus came down from heaven to earth so that those on earth could get up to heaven. Now, what made Paul think that just touching this young man would raise him from the dead? This man has fallen. His life is all jacked up. But look at what Paul does when he goes down. He doesn't take out a bunch of oil and swab all over him. He doesn't get up over him, spitting on him, trying to talk in tongues and saying stuff that folk can't understand. Y'all ain't like it, did Paul touched him. He hugged him and embraced him. What made Paul think that a hug could raise this young man? The reason Paul knew that touching this young man would raise him is because Paul knew what happened to him when he fell. In Acts chapter 9, Paul was on his way to persecute the church and fell off his horse. And when Paul fell off the horse, Barnabas came and embraced him. You see, the church wouldn't let Paul in, but Barnabas embraced him, and the church let Paul in. Paul said, somebody picked me up when I fell, so now I'm going to pick somebody else up. You see, Paul knew what it was like to be declared dead. Anybody know what it's like to be declared dead and counted out? In Acts chapter 14, Paul was stoned and left for dead, but the disciples prayed, and Paul came back. Paul said, if God had the power to raise me in chapter 14, he still got that same power in chapter number 20. Paul said, if God got me up, he can get somebody else up. But wait a minute. The person who is down and messed up is not going to get up just because somebody else does something. You got to do some things for yourself. Amen. Paul went down, touched him and hugged him, and the text says, and Eutychus, he got up. decision. And you can't get up without making a decision.
Amen.
You don't get up without some type of determination.
Amen.
I don't care who touches you. I don't care who lays hands on you.
Yes.
I don't care who speaks over you. I don't care who embraces you.
Yes.
You got to make a decision that I'm not going to be laying down anymore. You got to say to yourself, self, I used to be down, but I'm not going to be down anymore. I used to be on crack, but not anymore. I used to be a drunk, but not anymore. I used to mess up my money, but not anymore. Tell somebody not anymore. That's decision and determination. But wait a minute. The Bible says that he got up, then he went up. He got up, then he went back up into the same church. That's good. That's good. He went up to a high-level ministry. He went back to the same church that saw him fall. That's why some of y'all can't worship.
Yeah.
That's why some of y'all can't get involved.
Yeah.
That's why some of y'all can't praise God.
Yeah.
That's why some of y'all don't do anything but criticize and sit around and be negative and talk stuff down. Because you're too concerned about what folk on the outside are saying about what's going on the inside, and they just stop by every now and then. Some folk get up, but they never go up. They stay on the same level. I come to tell somebody,